If you have any experience with the Entity Framework, and in this module I do assume that you know a little bit about EF, then you might know there are three approaches to working with EF. You can do database first, model first, or code first. With the database first approach, you can go to your project and add an item of type Entity Framework Data Model, point it to a database, and EF will reverse engineer the database into a model, provide you a design surface where you can tweak the model and keep the model updated with the database. The database first approach will generate the code that you need to access the database by adding T4 templates to the project. Those are the files with the .tt extension. Those files read the model at compile time and generate C# code. You'll find the C# code files nested behind the TT file in Solution Explorer. A model first approach is very similar because you use the same design surface, but you typically start with no database and use the designer to generate SQL scripts that can create the database once you've added the entities that you want onto the design surface. Then there's the code first approach, and that's what we'll be using in this module. I'll write some classes that represent the entities that I want to store in the database, and the entity framework will make that happen. No design surfaces, just C# code. But regardless of which approach that you use, you'll always be using the Entity Framework DB Context API. That's the go-to API since the last version of EF shipped, EF version 5. Even the database first approach generates DB context code, and it is the DB context API that we'll use in this module. In fact, we'll use two DB context classes. Both of them will work with the same database instance, both will live in the same project, and both will have some migration scripts to keep the database in sync with the code. But I'm getting ahead of myself. What we need to do before we create migrations and all that will be a new project.